I think that the question about solitude versus loneliness is a valid concern for the targeted individual. And I believe that many of us suffer from loneliness, and that is one of the intended consequences of being gang-stalked. Our perpetrators, they want us to feel isolated, to feel not welcome, to feel other, to feel different, to be that aberration, and therefore we will retreat, which makes it easier for them to circle around us and have easier access to us. There's no one there watching what they're doing. There's no one there who might, for some reason, actually notice what they're doing and be offended or draw attention to what the perpetrator is doing. So isolation works in their favor. And because of that, I think that many TIs feel that isolation is a bad thing. And I'm going to argue that isolation is only bad depending on one's perspective. We can change the perspective perhaps by changing the terminology. Find another synonym. For example, isolation can be replaced with solitude. Solitude speaks of separateness, being set apart, but there is a sense of being set apart by choice. Solitude can be viewed as refuge, seclusion, and these are not necessarily bad. And therefore, what the witch-stalker, the gang-stalker is doing, their power is lessened because we are making this decision by choice. We are taking a little bit more control of our lives and not being the victim. And this is debatable. There are those who will argue about this, and rightly so. It's an argument that has been in society, in Western society, for centuries. It's nothing new. There are those who believe that solitude is not healthy. In fact, we know that in certain settings, solitude is treated, it's a punishment. It's a form of punishment that is meted out. For example, in prison. And it is, in that regard, it is viewed as a form of torture. And we also know that for many people, depending on the time period, depending on the social class, there are those individuals who have viewed themselves as being a social creature, as humans, as being social creatures. Therefore, there's no room for solitude. Christian Garve was a German, I'm going to use the word philosopher, but he made an observation, quote, "Overall, and in the nature of things, society seems to be made for times of health, vivacity, and amusement. Solitude, by contrast, seems to be the natural haven of the infirm, the grieved, and the stricken." So there you have it. For many people who are, we call them sometimes social butterflies, clearly they would see isolation. They would see it as isolation. They would see it from the perspective that the witch-stalker, gang-stalker wants us to see it as. That this is something that is bad. This is being used against you to hurt you. And yet, again, I argue, when we turn it around and look at it from a different perspective and embrace it and find the jewels, the diamonds in the muck, then it all goes away. That sense of being hurt, or as Garv says, stricken, it goes away. And a good example of this from this other side is I believe he's a French philosopher, Montaigne. I apologize if I'm pronouncing it wrong. He wrote an essay on solitude, and he makes an interesting point. Quote, "Now, since we are undertaking to live without companions, by ourselves, let us make our happiness depend on ourselves. Let us loose ourselves from the bonds which tie us to others. Let us gain power over ourselves to live really and truly alone, and of doing so in contentment." Content. To be content with being alone. I don't think our witch-stalker, gang-stalker perpetrators want us to feel that. But if we do it that way, if we have that perspective, we are taking that power to strike us, to leave us stricken. We're taking it from them. We can go further back. This essay on solitude, I'm not sure the exact year that it was written, but I'm going to give it a date and say at least the 1800s, maybe the 1900s, but we can go further back than that. We know that clearly, as descendants of the house of Jacob, one of the founding principles of the people of the Most High were to be set apart, was to be away from the rest of the world. Not only in terms of just religious or spiritual practices, but literally we know that there were periods where Jacob, they would not interact with other cultures in terms of sharing the same table to eat food. We know that sense of being set apart and separated was symbolically placed in the way that we were told how to separate livestock, how to plant certain grains, that they were not to be grown in the same field, that certain animals couldn't be herded together. This was something that it was inherent, it became inherent in the culture to be separated. And we can find that confirmed in the writings of the Apostle Paul in Romans chapter 12. Let's say chapter 12. Romans chapter 12. We're told clearly, "And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is your good and acceptable and perfect will of Elohim." So there it is. We're to transform even our minds. We're not to have a worldly mind. And this moves into the spiritual component of it. But again, this is what, again, I know I'm going to butcher his name, Montaigne, what he is speaking of. Let us loose ourselves from the bonds which tie us to others. Let us gain power over ourselves to live really and truly alone, and of doing so in contentment. Okay, and in order to do what he's speaking about, you have to transform your mind. You really do. And I argue that that is a wise and healthy choice. And that is what the targeted individual, it behooves us to do so until this fiery trial is over. That we find a way to come into a place of acceptance that it's happening. Not that we accept and therefore agree or support what they're doing to us. I'm not saying that. But if we can accept and acknowledge, okay, this is what is happening, but instead of being bitter and angry and trying to fight against it, I'm going to allow myself to take advantage of this time where I'm not around people. And I'm going to do other things. I'm going to learn about me in this quietness, in this echo, this societal echo. I'm going to find me. That's how I'm going to transform my mind. That's how I'm going to use this. And I believe that it is in that quiet, that gap, that deep space, that is where, as the scriptures say, deep calls out to deep. The deepness, the profound, overwhelming awesomeness that is the Most High, then everything that comes with the understanding and the realization of who He is and what it is that He is doing and what He is working in our lives, it can truly, and I argue, only be felt when we're alone, when we're in that echo, when there's nothing around. And it is from there, I believe, that He can show the targeted individual salvation, what it really means. It is from there that the targeted individual can gain a sense and a reality of the truthfulness of eternity.